Okay, I think we're live on YouTube. Everybody, please hang tight. We don't have a multimedia manager. Hang on, let me just see if we are actually properly live on YouTube. Give us 1 second, you guys. I think we are. Okay, final captain's cross check. Can everybody hear us? Hang on. Don't have okay, excellent. Yes, manager. It works. Okay, we are live. Hello and welcome everybody to our brand new live YouTube show. As I said multiple times, it's going to be live and a bit chaotic because it's just Bill and me, and we're just going to rough it. The title of our new show is called Deep Capture Wars, because that's what we are in. Very much so, all around the world. And most people don't really know what deep capture is. You have a feeling that somehow the top of your governments and public institutions and agencies have been taken over by a group, by a network. It's a very private club and we ain't in it. But there's an actual structure to deep capture, and we will be exploring it in the show. And I think overall, our topics for the show will be deep capture as the overarching topic. Below that, intelligence agency criminality. Bill is the retired technical director of NSA and one of the highest ranking whistleblowers in the US. I am a PhD in particle physics. I was originally a particle physicist. I left academia to start my own businesses, which were then sabotaged, and all my business endeavors were destroyed. And I started investigating the people who did that to me. And I very quickly found out it was the intelligence agencies. I didn't understand why. But the upshot of it is that for the last, I think, more than 10 years by now, almost, I think I started in 2011, so 14 years almost, I have been investigating Secret Service criminality. I became an expert witness for victims' court cases in Europe. And yes, then I came to the US in 2020. Bill and I got engaged. We first started working together because we wanted to help victims. Bill did a survey of Secret Service victims, so did I, an international survey, and we wanted to fuse our knowledge and start working together. That was at the start of 2020. My flight got cancelled during COVID, and Bill put me up, and we realized we're really soulmates. We got very close. We got engaged, and a few months later, we got married.
We had a common language, mathematics.
Mathematics. So Bill is a mathematician. He's also a math genius. Well, it's true. It's true. He actually is. He's very, very polite about it. But he was the best code breaker NSA ever had. You revolutionized their. That's the case, isn't it?
Well, people say that, but I had fun there. I mean, I did some things. It was a lot of fun, and for me, anyways, a mathematician. And I certainly, I ruffled a lot of feathers for solving problems and I never understood why people didn't just say, "Gee, that's great," and not get upset. But for some reason they got upset. Well, I guess it made them look bad. I don't know what. I have no idea. I'm not a psychologist. I'm a mathematician.
Yeah, that's usually what happens. So. Today we're going to introduce ourselves, but that's basically it. If you wanted to characterize how the show is going to go, it's going to be these two characters. Bill is the mathematician. I am the physicist, an experimental high energy physicist or particle physicist. So he's the mathematician, I'm the physicist. He's the polite, softly spoken gentleman. I am the outrageous Eastern European who has occasional bouts of Tourette's, and he's the good cop, and I tend to be the bad cop in all this. So this is how the show's going to go. And our topics will be deep capture, intelligence agency criminality, directed energy weapons, so modern stealth weapons that are, I think last time I checked, it was a $50 billion industry, but it's severely understated. Also covert non-consensual body implants, microchips in the body, neurotechnology in the body, brain implants, other body implants. We're talking about that too. Tied to these topics, both directed energy weapons and microchips in the body, if you combine them, you get neurotechnology. So we'll be talking about neurotechnology and its application. We will be talking about intelligence agency victims. called Targeted Individuals in the online, the targeted individuals community, who are really subjects of non-covert, non-consensual human experimentation by the military and the intelligence agencies. So we will be talking about victims. This series is also dedicated to the victims. And I think we also want to dedicate this series to the most famous victim of the intelligence agencies, which is President Donald Trump, who was nearly assassinated twice, or maybe 3 times, or even 4 times, depending on how you count. But 2 attempts, the one in Butler, Pennsylvania, and West Palm Beach, Florida, are the best known. They can both be traced back to a US intelligence and their allies. And we'll be talking about that a lot, actually.
And they they basically are saying they're pretty much through with those things, and those investigating them. And I haven't heard anything about what they've done. And there's certainly things that could be done to figure out if they're and do it reliably, figure out whether or not there might have been extensions to other people in this country or around the world that were involved in any way. And I have no confidence that they're doing the right thing, because probably, like in other cases, some of them might be involved in it, and that's what the real issue is.
Yeah, and people might not know, but we're going to show you some stuff today. I have conducted a multi-month investigation within my means. I don't have access to anything like the intelligence agency have. So my access is basically YouTube and Google. And so anything that's on social media, online, the mass media footage from Butler. And just by doing that, I found the announcement of the assassination attempt on President Trump, which was basically handed down to him by the Freemason network through the police. An Atlanta police officer marked President Trump for death exactly 3 months and 3 days before the Butler assassination attempt, using the Ace of Spades symbol, which is known as the death card. I found people who ducked too early in the crowd in Butler in the footage that's presented by I think the Wall Street Journal. So mainstream media footage. I found how the whole thing was coordinated on the day, how the exact moment of the shooting was being communicated with the intelligence agency plants in the crowd. So there's a lot of evidence that I've summarized in a 5.5-hour presentation on my YouTube channel, where I go through with painstaking detail through this. And that's really a video for other investigators who want to follow my precise steps. There's one thing missing, which is body cam footage from the day that I had on my laptop, and that was deleted by the intelligence agencies. I'm pretty sure about that, from my laptop when I gave that live presentation. So another thing that we'll also be talking about in the series is the non-stop torture that you and I are under. Both Bill and I have been non-consensually implanted with remote-controlled microchips and other biotechnology that can be used to induce synthetically generated pain. And because it's synthetically generated, it is much stronger than what the body can typically produce. So in other words, both Bill and I can be and are being extremely violently tortured at the press of a remote controlled button. And Bill by now has, I think you have a couple of hours per day when you're not being tortured, but we're talking 2 or 3 hours per day. Otherwise, Bill basically has to take the strongest painkillers available just to be able to cope during the day and at night. We're making this YouTube show right now because your pain level is very low. Your level of torture is very, very low. Otherwise, Bill is basically just writhing in pain, jolting, rocking back and forth, crying out in pain. So we're talking extreme torture that we have been trying to get stopped for months now, but we can't get through to President Trump or Kash Patel or anybody else. We are being stonewalled, and it's slowly getting ridiculous. So Bill is being, sorry.
Well, I was going to say, and we have some scientific evidence from spectrum analyzers of things that we've asked because in the spectrum, it's all allocated by the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, and their regulations. They break down and allocate the entire spectrum to different purposes, military and so on. And these are all military things, and their line of sight in the gigahertz range. And they've been following us around
We can
from
prove
state
it.
to state. And we have specific frequencies that we've asked both the DOD and the DODIG's office about, and they have not responded to us as to why they're radiating us with these line of sight energies.
Yeah.
I mean, the federal law requires them to get our informed consent to be any part of any kind of experiment. And they're in violation of that law by doing this. I don't know what they're doing with these radiations, and because I don't know what the signals are. I mean, I don't have a diarizing thing, or I don't have a decoding thing. I can't go in and see what the codes are to translate it into meaningful things or instructions to whatever. And they're not about to tell us, so.
Yeah.
But they are violating law doing this kind of thing.
Well, I would also.
And these signals are over 100 times stronger than anything else in the environment. Now that is that's nothing in a commercial environment that is acceptable.
Yeah. So in other words, we have ample scientific evidence that we are going to go through as part of this series for other victims who want to also maybe get concrete proof of how they're being tortured. The problem is most victims do not have the scientific background that Bill and I have. Bill has a background in intelligence. You were what was your title? The geopolitical
technical director of it was for basically analysis of NSA.
Yeah, analysis for the world.
Intelligence production for the world, yeah.
Yeah, so the geopolitical and military intelligence analysis for the world. So Bill was as high as one could get in technical analysis, I would say, right?
Pretty much, yeah. So I mean, I had things that I wanted to do that no one else in that agency was doing, and they still aren't.
They still are not. And we'll get into that, what can be done, what has been done and has been destroyed in terms of NSA capabilities. But the upshot is that we will be going through scientific is we're listing all the problems to do with the intelligence agencies, including their many covert murders and so on, their torture and their murder of victims, of witnesses, of other people they want to intimidate or get rid of. So it's all the ugly stuff that nobody wants to talk about. Now, the division between Bill and me is that he is really the math genius, the beautiful mind, and his realm are bits and bytes, because he was really a code breaker. You are the top code breaker in
I had a lot of fun. I just put it that way.
You were also the expert for Russia, I guess, right? During the Cold War.
Old Soviet Union,
yeah. The old Soviet Union.
So, and analysis automation, yeah.
Yeah, but you were not in operations, so you didn't do the ugly, disgusting stuff that CIA are doing. You were
well, that's not an NSA operation, yeah. That's CIA.
But you were also not in a part of the digital how to put it, the technical support of those dirty ops. So you had literally nothing to do with it. You were on the purely analysis and signal side of things.
We listened all the time.
Yeah. And so that was already bad enough. That's why you became a whistleblower. But overall, what you actually worked on was the monitoring of foreign hostile militaries. And that was foreign and hostile in militaries. Yeah. That was your remit. That's what you developed all your software for and all your platforms and the NSA. Decades you worked for, over 3 decades, 36 years at NSA.
Through the 4 years in the military and 32 at NSA.
Yeah. So you were instrumental in this, and then you discovered in the year 2000 that what you had built for foreign hostile militaries was being used for domestic civilians, really.
Well, yeah,
innocent civilians.
Well, it was when General Hayden took over, and he went with George Tenet and Bush and Cheney, and they said, well, after 9/11, what can you do, and don't pay any attention to the law? Yeah. And so they looked around, they knew of the programs that I were doing, designing, and they were the only ones inside the NSA that could handle massive amounts of data. And so they said, well, we could start to monitor everybody on the planet. But see, the programs I did, first of all, we began to recognize, or we had the ability to, in two parts. One on the World Wide Web came across in packets, so we had to sessionize the packets, pull them back together and reconstruct what's being sent. And we were able to do that at fiber rates in August of 1998. And so one of the guys in our group passed the code over to a site we had in Bad Aibling, Germany. And they just tried out. The system was about to crash because that site was inputting so much data that they couldn't handle it. So we got called in to shut them down, which we did. But that was August of 1998. Then September 1998, NSA, along I think with CIA, decided they were going to outsource that problem of metadata indexing, distributed storage, profile development, out to two guys from Stanford that eventually produced and created the Google empire. So our whole program, and they could do that. I mean, I did that for the government. They wanted to give away, they did it.
But basically, Google was founded from technology that you developed and they stole.
Yes, but they had no idea what I was planning on following that with. I had a whole plan of laying out automation where the minimum number of people could run the entire thing.
Without AI, one should say.
Well, I don't use the term artificial intelligence because there's nothing artificial about it.
Yeah.
What it is you take the thought process of people and you put it in a structured code and you execute it. So
yeah, well, that's the classical thing. Now they have basically algorithms that generate more algorithms, and they say that's learning. So it's like the code is not even written, but you're several steps down the line. We will also get into AI. Just a second.
Main problems with that too.
We will talk about AI and all the scams and frauds and what people call AI and what it actually is, because it's actually, you know, a huge fraud where money is behind it more than anything. But before we get into that, I want to back up because most people did not even understand what you just said about sessionizing this and metadata that. So in plain English, what Bill just said is that in June 98, was it? You guys could sessionize, means reconstruct from the data chunks that are being sent and truncated and sent down the internet. You can reconstruct the actual activity. You can reconstruct a Skype call. You can reconstruct a conversation. You can reconstruct WhatsApp, Zoom calls, everything. Files downloaded. So you can make sense of the data. And what you meant with you loaded the software on and then the German intelligence agency just basically deployed it is that they started downloading the internet as the internet and telecommunications were being broadcast. And of course, it completely shut down their system. Right. So, you know, they tried to download the internet and they found out they couldn't. And you were called in because that was never how it was meant to work, because your program was not about downloading everything, which is what they're doing these days.
We had a very focused, targeted approach right up front for selection of information. We were doing smart selection of things that were relevant to the issues we had to analyze.
Which were criminal and terrorist activity.
And governments and militaries,
Yeah. So you did it up front, and data that was not related to those key focus areas, militaries, governments, and terrorist activity went right by and were not recorded and stored. So in addition to that, you had privacy protection mechanisms through encryption, right? Can you talk about that?
Well, so if we took data in from what our criteria was to justify suspicious activity, that was when related to a criminal act or something of probable cause we had, then we would pull it in. If we didn't know for sure that particular person was involved in it, then we encrypted their attributes so you couldn't tell who you had. But you could see things that would help you relate to whether or not they were, or decide whether or not they were involved and prove it one way or the other. And whichever way it went, if they were part of it, you added them into the targeting. If you weren't, you threw them out.
So in plain English, to give the people an example, what Bill is saying is that his design, which was the original NSA design for their technical data collection, which turned into mass surveillance when it was corrupted. But the original design was that you didn't take junk in unless it was related to militaries, government, terrorist activity, or crime. You didn't take it in. That's it. If you felt that there was other information that might be related to, let's say, Osama bin Laden, right? You want to monitor Osama bin Laden, you pick out Osama bin Laden, but everything that related to his sister, his nanny, his mom, even his chauffeur or any others who were not known terrorists would be encrypted so that not even NSA analysts would know if they are spying on there. Is that right?
And I would point out that the intelligence community in the White House under Obama could not spy on President Trump's communications before and after his election.
That's right, because number one, they didn't have it because President Trump was not related to terrorist activity or criminal activity or the military or the government.
They would have no way of knowing where he was in the database.
That's right. So there was, with the original design, it would have been physically impossible to spy on President Trump because the data wasn't there at NSA to start with, number one. Number two, because he was a civilian, even if, let's say, Trump had a personal phone call with Osama bin Laden, which he did not have, but just for the sake of argument, if something like this would happen, anybody had ties to it, their entire attributes would be encrypted, right? And not even NSA people would know, oh, that's President Trump, or that's Osama bin Laden's nanny or mother. Their mother, their sister, their nanny, their chauffeur would be protected. But you might look at it because, hey, the chauffeur might drive some IEDs somewhere, right? Might be involved in something. So if you have to look at these one hop down from a key target, it would be encrypted. You would be able to read it, but not be able to know who it is and go after them any other way. So if you then found probable cause, the procedure was that they had to go to a judge and get a warrant to have it decrypted and unmask the identity. And we're talking about foreigners. All of these are foreigners because President Trump's stuff was also not in the NSA database because NSA didn't have a remit to spy on domestic Americans. Is that right?
That's the charter. That's the charter of the agency, yeah.
So
Foreign intelligence.
Yeah, so President Trump's stuff could have never been spied on with the original design of NSA. And that's extremely important to understand because when Bill found out that his stuff was being misused, what they did was, number one, they stripped the privacy protections. The encryption went out.
First of all, in order to decide whether or not something was relevant to a probable cause justified target in a criminal activity or something like that, you have to be able to look at it. So that meant we had to be able to put things together to the point where we could look at everything.
Yeah.
But that's where we did the selection and it just left everything else float right by and don't take it in. Whereas what they decided to do when you get rid of the selection, that means you can take everything in. And that's exactly what they did. And then they got rid of the encryption.
Oh, wait. Another important thing is that when you start taking everything in and you literally download every phone call, everything, every internet search, every internet website, every WhatsApp message, anywhere in the world, because that's what NSA is doing, right? And you store it, you need a capital F load of storage, right? So they started building the facility called Bluffdale in Utah, which is all public knowledge, by the way, right?
Yeah, 1 million square foot facility. Yeah.
1 million
For
square foot
data only.
1 million square foot facility, and you did the calculation that would amount to about 5 years worth of the internet and
about 5 zettabytes.
Yeah, 5 zettabytes, which equates to the world telecommunications, the internet, the telephones, the cell phones, everything, social media messages, everything for 5 years fits into Bluffdale. Right?
I'm sure they got rid of like public television and stuff like that. You can suppress all that, but
so you can reduce the database, but otherwise they are storing everything, and there are many more Bluffdales out there. So in other words, what we're trying to say is that it went from a very NSA being a purposeful organization up to the late 90s to people discovering the power of the internet, and it became a mass surveillance operation under Hayden. right?
Yep. Initially.
And it became an illegal, unconstitutional operation. So today, NSA is an unconstitutional, illegally operating entity.
And they do word games. Like, for example, to give you an example, they said, well, after 9/11, they said, well, when they found out that they had calls from the Yemen facility and to the Yemen facility that were minimized, that one side was minimized. What that meant minimizing means they blank it out.
Okay.
There's no attribute there. Like there's no phone number on one side, but you have the Yemen facility phone number on the other side.
Censored, it's classified.
So
what that is.
What that means is that well, they said, well, we don't know where that's coming from, because it's minimized. Well, it's minimized because it's in the United States. Well, that's a major alert. You have the Yemen facility talking to somebody in them. Why wasn't the FBI notified that they were doing that? I have no idea. I mean, if it were me and I saw that, I would have called them right away and said, these guys are talking to the Yemen facility. It looks like Al-Qaeda's got plants in here in the United States. And they would have got on it. I mean, this is crazy.
So what
happened? That by saying we didn't know where it came from, that's also a lie, by the way. The number was unmasked inside the collection database at NSA. They could go in and find out exactly what the number is.
So basically that was used to say to the general public, we have to store everything and keep it open and also start spying on the American domestically.
Well, that was one of the things. And they said, well, you have to give up privacy to have security. And that was an outright lie from the beginning. But it cost us tens of billions of dollars and thousands of people, and it's been a mess from 9/11.
All right, but
because of these idiots.
It was a mess from 1998 by the sound of it. Okay, so anyway, to put it all into a format that people can understand, NSA went from being a lawful organization doing what they're meant to be doing, right, to a point where in the year 2000 and 2001 they started switching over to mass surveillance because they discovered the power of the internet and they discovered the power of your sessionization capabilities.
The design of it, yeah.
And another thing that happened in 98 when you managed to sessionize the internet, which means to decode and put it all together so that it's searchable and it's humanly understandable, is that you wanted to index the entire internet, and indexing and making it searchable is exactly what Google did, right? Now that was Bill's technology.
Using metadata.
Another thing that happened,
which is what they're doing.
Yeah, metadata is, the overall, not the content, but everything related to it. Where does it go from which to what point and so on. Now, another thing that happened in 98 that people need to know about is that you did this work with German intelligence in June, you said, when they try to download the whole internet and unsurprisingly crashed their system.
No, it was August, but that was our site in Germany.
Okay, that's what I mean. But it was work done with the German intelligence on your site and the US site in Germany. That was in August. At some point, late summer or in September is when they launched Google or gave it to the Stanford.
27th of September of 1998 was when they started funding, outsourcing and funding that issue to Google.
Okay, so
to those two guys from Stanford.
27th of September. So in August, you do this work. You prove that you can sessionize the internet and you want to index, and you had the indexing of the internet. They launched Google. So we're talking a month here. And in between you doing the work with the at the German site and them launching Google, Bill survived an assassination attempt where your car was rammed in a 25 zone in your local community. It's the little community that has one street in where your house was. In a 25 zone, your car was rammed at 55 miles per hour. Something.
Yeah, the guy was doing about 50, I would think.
Yeah, so 50 miles per hour. It was like a T-boning, classical assassination attempt. And what was interesting is when you told me about it, I used to walk the family dog exactly at that through that little community. And I said, Bill, nobody would be driving 50 miles per hour in that direction, because after that junction, there's a little hill and you can see it's a dead end. There are about three. Yeah. It's a cul-de-sac. There are 3 houses, but the street curves up. So you can see it's a cul-de-sac. That road doesn't go anywhere. So you have to slow down to that junction to turn left, as this guy had to do, to leave the community. Add to that, he was a taxi driver and a Russian.
Yeah.
So blame the Russians again, but it was a clear hit. And basically what we're saying here is that Bill is the genius who developed all this, who knew how to do it, who developed it. They tried to kill him to be able to spin it off to Google and make absolute gazillions of money.
But there's lots of ways to fix this still, and make it right.
We'll get to it.
And
We'll get
that's
to it.
another subject.
We will get to it. How to fix all this criminality is the purpose of the whole deep capture
Yeah.
war. So don't despair as you're hearing about this, because the point we are trying to make is that for all of this, they are super cheap, very fast, and very effective solutions for everything.
And we have something we wanted to talk about here that could show. The point is, if you put together a software routine to run against all this data, define something, an activity. When you run it, you get the whole activity at once.
That's right. So we'll
what-
show you examples about how we can prove that people don't know what the capital F they're doing right now. Because if they knew what we know, that's not how you would go about doing it.
And I've got examples of how that worked, and they were shut down by the government.
Yeah. So anyway, we should also say that tonight, because it's very late, it's 11 p.m. at the East Coast. Today is the rambling, have a drink in your hand, join us sort of introduction to our episode. And from now on, we'll go topic by topic, show you exact concrete evidence, and it will be for everybody's education, including professional investigators. So
Yep.
today is kind of like the loose end, hey, see, get to know us and see if you like our faces sort of episode. So please forgive us if we don't have it perfectly structured. We will have it from now on. But what you guys need to understand is that as these so-called geniuses are being floated out there by the government and by the mass mainstream media, the real geniuses are the ones being tortured to death at home. That is this guy who actually knows how to do shit. Now, we can prove that the people who are currently running the agencies don't have the foggiest clue, not even remotely. And as a result, the assassination attempts of President Trump have still not been investigated. There are concrete leads that I published months ago. We have been personally trying to get through to President Trump and got stonewalled by his people. We tried to get through to Secret Service Director Curran and we got stonewalled. I personally drove evidence to Mar-a-Lago to hand it in. I survived an assassination attempt on the drive by the FBI. And I was still stonewalled by the Secret Service. After that, I drove to the Secret Service headquarters in DC twice and got stonewalled both times, even though I sent a letter ahead of time saying, I will be there. I really would like to hand this in. It is important in all caps, right? Fortunately, that time, nobody tried to kill me, but other stuff was done to me that I will get into in greatest detail. And so currently we are in this situation that we're starting this show and we really are appealing to the help of other patriots, other people who want to see this country tidied up and want humanity to succeed against deep capture by the deep state tentacles here. But for that, we need everybody to help us, and we need President Trump and his agency heads to finally listen to us and stop going with false icons. So we want to teach them. I also want to teach them about the Secret Service symbolism that is very useful in unmasking people, because they have to signal to their minions who they truly are, not to confuse the deep state system within itself. So we'll go through the symbolism as well and its power. And ultimately, we also want to spin a solution to all this. We wanted to suggest a new organization which is completely independent from the FBI, which we both believe, I think, is so captured, it's kind of beyond redemption. And we want to propose a whistleblower organization that is very much, it's not just a whistleblower organization, it is an investigative body that is dedicated to investigating deep capture and organized crime within the government solely. So, of course, government works with private companies, it has tentacles, but the focus is like an immune system that goes in and gets all the toxins, all the pathogens out of the system so that the organs in a body can function properly. If they get diseased, the whole body dies. And that is what's happening in the government. That's what we're seeing. Every single organ of government has been infiltrated by foreign bodies, foreign agents, by foreign interests, and it's now not functioning at all. So Doge has uncovered quite a lot of the financial side, but it hasn't uncovered anything of the criminal networks that are operating within government.
Stuff.
It is the surface financial stuff. It is hugely important, and we support Doge's work entirely, but there's so much more. There has to be criminal investigations, and ultimately Bill's capabilities about mapping the network and his thin thread program that we'll talk about, it is absolutely crucial to be re-implemented properly, so that the government's normal functions can be restored, but also so that President Trump can survive.
Yeah.
Because
threat detection was the main issue with thin thread.
Yeah, so threat detection, and right now that is not being done at all. Now, one of the things we would like to do tonight is we want to show you a couple of things to kind of explain to you why it's so urgent. Let's see if this is reconnecting. Is it reconnecting to YouTube? Let's see. I have to, okay. I'm sorry, guys. If you guys can hear us, let me just do a check on the YouTube end here. Are we back live? Let me jump ahead. We seem to have been thrown. I'm not sure if the YouTube video terminated. I should also talk about sabotage if we can get reconnected here. Sorry, stand by, guys. This goes with the territory. Are we back live? Yes, we are back live. Okay, so what happened is that our internet got shut off. As we're going this, so Bill is fairly high profile. I'm much better known in Europe, but to my knowledge, I'm the only expert witness for intelligence agency criminality. Both of us have survived multiple assassination attempts. I've survived so many, I lose count sometimes. And as a result, our show will be sabotaged. So you can expect us to be taken offline, videos disappearing. You can also expect things like sound sabotage, where sometimes certain frequencies in our voices get amplified, like hissing sounds to make it annoying. Sometimes it will be too loud, too quiet. You will witness everything as we're going forward. And from now on, we'll also do our attempts to get through to President Trump very publicly, so you can watch the sabotage we undergo live, okay? So this was an example in point here. We were just taken offline. Our internet got disconnected for a moment. So now let me get back to it and let me share my screen and take you through one of the most glaring examples of how we can tell that the people in government don't know what the heck they're doing. Okay, so this is a news report from a month ago where Bondi and director Kash Patel announced the arrest of 205 child sex predators. Okay, so, and then we'll show you what they're saying, and then we'll explain what the floof is wrong with this.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. We have a busy day here at the Department of Justice, as I'm sure a lot of you have seen already. Today, we are proud to announce the results of the FBI's Operation Restore Justice initiative. This historic, unprecedented nationwide operation led to the arrest of 205 child sex predators. Unbelievable. In just 5 days.
Okay, so it was nationwide. It led to the arrest of 205 child sex predators in 5 days. So working week, okay? So nationwide, the FBI got going and managed to arrest 205 child sex predators. Now, first of all, right, let's lean back in physics. When you're teaching students and they get to results, the first thing you say to them is, now lean back, have a good look at this result, and see if there's anything wrong. Do the units look right? Is it the right order of magnitude? Is that what you expect? Is there anything you can spot that tells you that this is effed up, right? Now, I'm getting excited. So when I have to say, when I heard this, you were, I think, outside in your office. I was in my office and I heard this news report. My reaction was no, oh, this is unbelievable. This is really good news. My reaction was, you are fucking kidding me. Literally, you are shitting me with this. You got 200 and you worked for a full week at the FBI that has 38,000 employees, and in a working week you managed to find 4 child sex predators per US state. So you mobilized it for this like Operation Restore, whatever you call it, and in a week these people managed to, per US state, these FBI field officers managed to find 4 child sex predators, 205. Now lean back and ask yourself if that's impressive or not, because the answer is very, very not. Because, for example, if you go to a standard online platform where child sex predators are chatting about the abuse of children and gloating about, for example, the abuse of their own children, there will be more than 205 people just on that site. Site.
The issue is there's probably tens of thousands involved in this kind of stuff.
Per US state.
Yeah.
Per US state.
This is ridiculous. I mean, if you, obviously they're doing this manually. I mean, otherwise, you know, you would have thousands. I mean.
Okay, so here's if I may have a little rant here. Kash and Pam Bondi are lawyers, okay? Yeah. They are very good at what they do, but they are lawyers. They are social scientists. When you're dealing with large data sets and investigations and scientific research are the same if you do it the right way. It is like scientific research. You need experts who can do investigations, who can think scientifically about big data. Bill dealt with big data. As a particle physicist, I dealt with big data from our particle detectors. These days, because people have been told just learn how to code, many people know how to do big data analysis. And when you realize that people worked for a week and found 4 people per US state who are involved in this activity, it is so underwhelming. You would never, ever go public and say this because your face would go up in flames from shame. It is that pathetic. It is shit beyond any definition of shit. The only time you would ever go public is if you're a social scientist and you don't know what the F you're doing. And that is very, very bad news, because while I completely support Pam Bondi and Kash Patel for who they are not the right people to be heading an organization that should be doing investigations and work scientifically and be able to handle large data. How do we know that the FBI should handle big data? Because they have access to the mass surveillance database of the NSA, where literally everything gets recorded. So every single pedophile exchange online since the year 2000 or 2001, yeah. The last 24 years of pedophile chatter online is already in the NSA database. It's already there. If you would do a search with big data analysis tools and pull out the pedophile chatter of everybody, you could get them all from the last quarter of a century in a week. You could get them all.
Well, actually, less than that. It's whatever time it takes to run the program. You run the program in, say, an hour and a half. Through the data, and you could get you'd have your complete answer in that time.
And now another thing that I want people to realize, I think I've got a phone here. So the processing power of a phone these days is amazing. You don't even have to have this particular brand. Any phone has an amazing processing power that in the palm of your hand, you have as much processing power as the most powerful laptop had a couple of years ago. Now, you can program your phone to run over how many people are on planet Earth? 7 billion? I keep forgetting.
About 8 now.
7, 8 million, whatever. Let's call it 9. Let's call it 9 and valid for a couple of. If you have 9 billion entries about the person, Okay, people are born every second, fair enough, but it doesn't go from 9 billion to 10 billion overnight. So if you say 9 billion entries, that's good for a couple of years. How long would it take me to run over 9 billion entries about people with some sort of characteristics with a phone? Because it's a microprocessor that has gigahertz rates, which means a billion of calculation processes per second, a billion per second, and you have 9 billion people, then just pinging everybody's name, I mean, there's more steps per calculation, but roughly speaking, takes a second to just ping 9 billion entries, okay? If you have to do analysis on them, it slows down, but in a second, you can touch 9 billion entries. So how long does it take me to go through everybody's communication with pedophile code words and stuff like that, or related, look up the people who are related to pedophile sites. And once I've done that, let's say I take a working day, would I have to redo it the next day? No, I wouldn't, because you're either born a pedophile or you're not. Like you're born gay or you're not, right? People don't turn into pedophiles. Or people who are pedophiles typically don't cycle out of it, unfortunately. So when you have active predatory pedophiles, they will be pedophiles Monday, Friday, and next year. All right. So once you found them, you're done. You're done. And with your phone, you can get it done in a day. That's not, of course, you need NSA database access, which you already have. So if Kash and Pam, they don't even need to do it themselves because they're in leadership positions, which means that they don't do jack themselves. They ask people to do it. But when you ask the right people who understand big data analysis, like Bill, you get the work, all the work done in a week for the whole world, not just the United States, which is only what, 325 million people?
Something like that.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you know what you're doing, you get all the pedophiles in week 1. And then next week, you get all the drug dealers in week 2. And then if you want child traffickers, you get all the child traffickers in week 3. How can you do it? Well, for example, if you want to supply the whole of the continental width of the United States with drugs, it's a huge operation. Like the shit you have to import and distribute to all the cities and all the towns so that nobody goes into withdrawal anywhere in Seattle, in Washington, Austin, Texas, right? It's a huge operation. So it means that if you're looking into the supply chain, it's a fucking elephant in the room. You can't miss it. And also, once people are drug users, they stay drug users next week. Once they're drug dealers, they stay drug dealers. People who are clean stay clean next week, next year. So once you've identified drug users on Monday, it's going to be the same drug users and drug dealers on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So in other words, as you're progressing through your work, once you have mapped them, you have mapped them. And then you've mapped the whole drug supply for Seattle or for the whole state of Oregon or the whole state of Texas, and you're done. There's nothing that you have to redo, you idiots. So the question is, if you know what the capital F you're doing, why does it take a week to find 200 pedophiles? If it takes a week, you find them all, right? If you don't find them all, it means you don't know what the F you're doing, right? And unfortunately, people are being, children are being raped to death. They're being tortured to death. So it's kind of like we're running out of time here. We need to get our asses into gear. But if you want to get our asses into gear, we have to put the people into the key positions of investigation who actually know how to do shit. So in particle physics, typically the detectors and the data acquisition and the data analysis are run by particle physicists. We don't get lawyers to tell us what analysis we need to do because they wouldn't know, would they? Right? Now, the whole thing can be fixed, and Kash and Pam are in the right place and are the right people for the job, but they need to be told what's possible. They need to learn what is possible and what is freaking ridiculous. And right now, I think you can tell the difference in personality here. Right now, these people are being bullshitted by the FBI. Is that a fair assessment?
I use the term bamboozled.
Okay, bamboozled. Right. They're being fucked sideways.
Well, even the people who are doing the bamboozling even they they don't have everything, all their synaptic patterns aren't working.
It is very basic bamboozling. It's
Yeah.
basically moron grade bullshitting what's happening here,
Yeah.
right? Would
My
that be a fair
example is
assessment?
when the minimization, they say, well, we couldn't tell who it was. Well, I mean, first of all, that wasn't true. But secondly, if you were an analyst at NSA, it was true because it got blanked out. But that was a red flag right there, just by the fact that it was blanked out. I told you that was a protected area. That means they're in a protected area, meaning the United States.
So in other words, the Yemenis were calling people they shouldn't be calling, and you have to investigate them because they're tied to terrorism coming out of Yemen, right?
That was a major center for Al Qaeda. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but now the point is that as soon as Kash and Pam are being told what is possible, they will never ever go public and say, "Yay, we found 205 in a week." Nationwide. If they had said we found 205 in DC, I would have been like, oh, jeez. But when you say 205 across I mean, the width of a continent, you found 205 with 38,000 people. It's a joke. It's a joke. Like the order of magnitude is so off. It's not funny. I would have also been pissed off if they had said thousands across the full width of the US. I'm sorry, there are thousands in our local community. In a city, you have thousands of pedophiles. If you're talking about the United States, I'm not going to be happy unless you say tens of thousands in a week or hundreds of
Something like that,
thousands.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. With the hundreds, when you say we found 250,000 pedophiles in a week, I'll be like, wow, well done. Not bad, not bad. Now get on to arresting them and actually charging them with stuff, right? But when you haven't even found them, it is appalling. Now, I would like to get onto something that's very close to my heart because I spent 6 months investigating it, which is the assassination attempts on President Trump. So what people probably can guess by now is that we're both Republican. Bill is a Republican in MAGA. I came to the US and I didn't know anything about politics, but I supported President Trump in his first term from Europe because he was just such an awesome guy. By the time I came here, I'm basically ultra MAGA. I am like viciously MAGA. I can't take the bullshit anymore. I am all about shutting down the deep state and I go after it. So I am rabidly MAGA, I would say, right?
Yep.
So
I can testify to that.
yes. So anyway, people don't do any political advertising in Europe. And yet when I came here, I said, I want to have the biggest Trump 2024 sign in the street. And I did, right? I was willing to pay the people who were harvesting in the field next to us and pay them to just write Trump 2024 on the field so that all the planes could see Trump 2024. But I didn't actually meet them and I couldn't pay them off to do it. So, but anyway, it is super important what we're doing here. And the survival of President Trump is not just systemically important for the United States, it is systemically important for the world. So what happened in Butler is a big, big, big deal. As soon as Butler happened, I sat down, I said to Bill, we saw it half an hour later, we sat down to dinner and I said, hey, let's just check the news. And while we ate dinner, there it was. And I said to Bill, I'm not going to bed until I have smoking gun proof that the intelligence agencies did this. And I found it 12 hours later. I went through everything. I mean, it was obvious, but if you want smoking gun evidence where you can put faces to the crime, it took me some work, but I found it. It was those two people who ducked too early, who knew exactly that shots would be fired and that they had to duck from something. And they ducked so fast that President Trump's hand didn't even touch his ear. They ducked so fast. So anyway, but since then, I've been investigating this. And I think single-handedly with a refurbished $200 laptop from Walmart, I achieved more than the entire FBI has since then. And as I've just learned, the investigation into the Butler assassination attempt has been shut down. And Dan Bongino, the FBI deputy director, went public saying there's nothing there. The guy acted alone. You know, we're done with it, which is the biggest, fattest, most disappointing lie ever, right? So anyway, what I want to show you guys is the following thing, because President Trump talked about these assassination attempts let me just make sure you're seeing the right stuff. So let me, sorry, it's very pedestrian today. And we're gonna streamline it, and it's gonna be a lot less annoying. I want you guys to hear how President Trump feels about the things that he was told by his people, including the Secret Service, because this is a Trump that I haven't seen before. This is a pissed off Trump. So listen to this report here on Fox News, and listen carefully how President Trump talk about it. And as we're going through it, we're going to point out some egregious stuff that really needs to be investigated. So listen.
There's a lot of frustration that we still don't know about that shooter in Butler, and we don't know about his communications. We get stonewalled all the time asking questions about it. Is there frustration on your part? Will we get transparency? Will we know the bottom line story?
It's very interesting because we have great people. I think Pam is incredible. I think Kash is incredible. And they're doing a great job. They're being recognized as doing a great job. I was given an explanation early on, you know, sort of a little bit pre them. And I thought it was strange. You know, the one guy had 18.
Oh, sorry. It started to load. I wanted to pause it briefly because President Trump is such a great leader. He's always extremely supportive. He's always referring to people as great people. And that's true. Kash wrote Government Gangsters. He's a great guy. Pam Bondi did great work in Florida she's the Attorney General now, I think she's heading the DOJ, right? The Attorney General is the head of the DOJ overall, right? The Department of Justice. And it's true, they are great people. It's just that their qualifications don't match the job. And as a result, if you're not ever told,
It's a technical issue.
yeah, if you're never given truthful capabilities about what can be done, you don't know what to ask for. You don't know what's possible, and you don't know what is a goddamn joke, right? As we've just shown. So yes, Kash and Pam are great people, but as social scientists, they haven't got a freaking clue, and they're being bullshitted all the way by the intelligence agencies, by the FBI, by NSA, and that is the problem. So they are not the full answer. They are the beginning of an answer, but it's not the whole thing. Now, listen to what Trump says about those 18 cell phones. Oh, no. Is there an advert coming up?
Have you ever wondered how secure your wealth?
Oh, my God. I don't even know how I can avoid this, but I have to step through this stupid advert first. Yes, I know. So anyway, let me share my screen again and get back to this, because what President Trump is talking about, and let me back up a bit. God. So other professional YouTubers have people to do this for them in the background, and we don't. So, but anyway, bear with us. We're going to get there. So President Trump talking about those 18 cell phones, right? That the second guy had, the Ryan Ruth guy.
Pre them. And I thought it was strange. You know, the one guy had 18 cell phones. Okay. I have a lot of cell phones, but I have like 2. You know, I call that a lot. And I think I probably make more calls than him. It's like, that's all I do. And I had to, why does somebody have 18? Another one, the first one, the one from Butler, he had 3
Oh, sorry.
apps, very unusual apps, and 2 of them were foreign apps.
Okay.
And then he ends up with...
Off the bat, when you and I hear this, 18 cell phones, 18 cell phones, operational cell phones, right, that he used, off the bat, I think we can tell that's Intel. That's an Intel agent. That's an Intel, you don't even frickin' think about it. There's your answer. There's your evidence. That is the smoking gun evidence that you're looking for. Multiple passports, multiple telecommunications. This is somebody who's trying to keep identity separate. So he has multiple identities, multiple roles, works for multiple front organizations. It's like, that is not a detail. That is the evidence, the smoking gun evidence.
Well, plus they needed to go into the calling communities on each of the phones and unify those into the aggregate calling community, investigate them all. And they didn't do any of that as far as I can see.
They didn't do any of that. And then the other thing is, when you have 18 cell phones, NSA has all the communications.
Yep.
They have all the world. It's hard to believe, but they have the worldwide. It's also Japan, also China. They have everybody's telecommunication. Why is a different show here? We'll get to that, but they collect the world. Do they collect the whole of the United States, even though it's against their charter? Yes, they do. So you can basically, as soon as you hear cell phone, one cell phone, you can reconstruct the whole lifetime of that guy who used that cell phone. You can make a life map. You can chronologically go back and forth through the time he used that cell phone or telecommunicated at all with his grandma or with his dog walker. It doesn't matter. The data is all there. So the point is, all this evidence is in everybody's freaking face and gets thrown away by people like Kash and Bongino, who say there's nothing there. Bongino literally said there is no there. Hello, that is the there that we're looking for. 18 cell phones means bada boom. He works for Intel. End of freaking story.
And it's like Barr saying there was no fraud in the 2020 election when he didn't look at the CCTV of the Georgia after-hours voting registration, where they were plugging multiple votes in over and over again after they kicked everybody out and pulled them out from under a covered table in a suitcase. They brought these votes out and then started shoving them in over and over again.
But I guess
no fraud. Shut your eyes, don't look.
In Bill Barr's case, it's kind of not surprising because he's an Intel plant. Okay, the guy's a plant. His job is to bullshit and lie. But Bongino went in wanting to shut down the deep state. So what happened to Bongino? And I would say he got brain fucked. He got brain fucked by the intelligence agencies. I just want to say to him, hey, Dan, go back home to Florida or wherever you live and get the hell away from the 5G antennae in DC because they're clearly mind controlling you. I don't know what's happening to you, but you are obviously throwing away evidence that is smoking gun evidence in your freaking face. And it's very much looks like you're lying in our faces, claiming the sky is purple when we can all see it's not. So anyway, 18 cell phones, right? But it gets better than that. What I wanted to point out about Trump is just look at his reaction as his people are basically stringing him along.
A white shoe lawyer, meaning a super lawyer from Pittsburgh, you know, the big city.
I'm talking about the Butler case where the guy had, I think, 2 cell phones and 3 foreign apps or something like that.
And then he ends up with a white shoe lawyer, meaning a super lawyer from Pittsburgh, you know, the big city. And they live outside of Butler in a little place. Where do they get this lawyer that would represent IBM and would represent ExxonMobil?
But you're the president. Can't you find out?
No, I know. I'm relying on my people to tell me what it is. You know, we have deep-seated craziness in this country. And
So, sorry, it just cycled out. It's very hard for me to stop it. So, did you notice that Trump had some sort of, well, it's not even micro expressions, it's macro expressions, a body language cue that I've never heard him ever display before. When Brett Baer asks him, well, you're the president, can't you find it out? Because the media is being stonewalled all the time.
The first one from Butler, he had 3 apps, very unusual apps, and 2 of them were foreign apps.
Now, off the bat, it doesn't matter if it's domestic or foreign. NSA has all the data. It doesn't matter. They can translate languages. It doesn't matter. But if it's foreign apps, you could still be talking domestically to other, US intelligence people using foreign apps. But the point is, it doesn't matter if it's foreign or not. All the data is there, right? So the next thing is that the Crooks family got this high-flying lawyer to represent them. How can they pay for this guy?
And then he ends up with a white shoe lawyer, meaning a super lawyer from Pittsburgh, you know, the big city. And they live outside of Butler in a little place. Where do they get this lawyer that would represent IBM and would represent ExxonMobil?
So people who live in a tiny home, as in they don't really have much money. They don't live in a big McMansion somewhere. It's a very modest home outside Butler, very small place in the countryside. Suddenly get a high-flying lawyer, big shot city lawyer who would represent ExxonMobil and people like that. So a cutthroat, real go after them type of lawyer. The question is, where does the money come from? Well, when you have answered the question about the 18 cell phones, it's clear. It's from the intelligence agencies. If you have analyzed Butler correctly and found the people who ducked too early and done the analysis like I did and can prove it's the intelligence agencies, it's clear. The money is coming from the intelligence agencies. Maybe one of their front organizations, maybe one of their plants. It doesn't matter. You know where the money is coming from. Again, the volume of money available to the family who are otherwise, I think they are behavioral therapists, not the highest paying jobs. That is the proof that then Bongino needs to look at. That is the evidence. It's not just something that's ancillary. That is the evidence. Also, when you see that the FBI came in and washed down the slightly slanted roof in Butler, where the shooter's body was, they washed it down the next morning. So the shooting happened at 6 p.m. So the evidence was there. I think it was there for 12 hours or even less. Early in the morning, the FBI washed it down. The evidence, the crime scene was preserved for less than 24 hours. The FBI washing down the DNA evidence from the roof is the smoking gun evidence that you're looking for in this case. Why would they possibly want to do that? Well, if you combine it with other evidence that stares you in the face, for example, the fact that it was reported that the Thomas Crooks home was bleached. There wasn't even silver cutlery there. There's only plastic forks. There was nothing where you might have any residue of DNA. Right? So the Butler home was wiped of DNA, bleached. They said it was like a hospital. And the DNA evidence is washed down from the roof. That is the evidence you need to figure out, even if you only have 2 brain cells to rub together, that it means that the DNA evidence is what needed to be covered up. In other words, the shooter was not actually Thomas Crooks. So the DNA in the Crooks home would not have agreed with the DNA of the guy on the roof. That's the only reason why the FBI would have to do it. And when the FBI does it, it means the FBI hired the shooter on the roof who was not Thomas Crooks. All right? It stares you in your freaking face. It's right there. Right? That is the evidence, Bongino. If you have your brain switched on and you're not being, brain fucked by the next 5G antenna outside your office. That is the evidence. All right. Now, the one thing I want to point you at is Trump's reaction when Brett Baer says, hey, but you're the president. Listen to how Trump reacts.
You're the president. Can't you find out?
No, I know. I'm relying on my people to tell me what it is. We have deep-seated.
Make the sound. It's the body language cue of extreme frustration. I know. Trump doesn't talk like that. He has to really swallow frustration, anger, impatience. He had it with these people, right? He feels like they're holding him for a fool and he's getting angry. And I would say it's completely justified because what the FBI has produced so far is a joke, right? So
craziness in this country, and I'm relying on my people, and so far they're good, but so far and in this case it's Secret Service, they tell me it's fine. But it's a little hard to believe, to be honest with you, okay? It's a little bit hard to believe as I get that throbbing feeling.
Yeah.
I get a little throbbing feeling.
Well, if you find out, we'd love to know. We can continue to ask.
So can you hear the frustration? How he said, oh, now it's the Secret Service. And they tell me it's fine. Like he is suppressing what he really wants to say. If he were me, this is the moment when I break into a bout of swearing, right? And he obviously doesn't do it. But that's just how ridiculous it is. So we have the president of the United States who was nearly murdered live on camera Months have passed. He put his people in position, and they are telling him it's fine. And I think it was, this interview was after, I think it was, yeah, after James Comey had this little seashell thing where it said 86-47.
Yep.
So 86-47 to 86 somebody means to kill somebody, okay? And I'm gonna dedicate a special episode to that announcement. But the point is, because there's just so much coded stuff in there that most people miss. But the point is that when you figured out that it was the 18 cell phones means Ryan Ruth, who was the guy with the 18 cell phones, was an intelligence agent. When you figure out that the FBI washing down the roof and bleaching the Crooks house means that the shooter wasn't Thomas Crooks, and the FBI knows it, so the FBI hired the real shooter. When you know all this, that both of the people trying to kill Trump were hired by the intelligence agencies, it comes at no surprise when the former director of an intelligence agency, the FBI, announces the next attempt against President Trump. But you also know that when this happens, it is bloody serious. It means that there will be another assassination attempt by the intelligence agencies. So when you have your people that you've just put at the head of the FBI, director and deputy director, Patel and Bongino, and then the head of the DOJ, Pam Bondi, and also Director Curran, and they're all telling him it's fine. It is so fucking not fine. It can't get any not finer than that. It's ridiculous. It just takes the fucking piss. Right? Can you say it politely?
They failed to investigate a lot of things that happened that they should have gotten very deeply and followed to the end. They didn't do that.
It is horrifying. And the underlying causes, because these people are good people. So their character is very good, but their qualifications are not good enough. It's from the wrong field. You can't put, I don't know, an orthopedic surgeon there and try to make them do brain surgery. It's the wrong qualifications. They need to hire people who actually know what the hell's going on. Now, add to this that we've been trying to get through to them since September, and we have been stonewalled. We have also failed. We tried to reach out to Kash Patel via email through a joint acquaintance who told us that our email was passed on. Kash Patel refused to get back to us. And I'm a nobody in the US, but you are the guy who built the system that NSA is using. Maybe if he wants to do big data analysis and find all the pedophiles and not just 4 per US state in a week, he should talk to Bill, but yet he doesn't. So something is going badly wrong. And in this series, we're going to put all the information that these people need, or most of the information, what we can make public, into the public domain so that the American people can pass this on. But also word of warning, because we will also provide evidence that what we are saying privately in our home is being echoed by the intelligence agencies, and quite outrageously so. And they're passing it, in some cases, passing it off as their own work without having understood it. And we will provide evidence of that. So there were public testimony or public things that happened in the Trump administration where I can prove that my work and an internal report that I have been drafting for Secret Service Director Curran for months now, but I couldn't hand in because he wouldn't see me and receive it, that details of that report were quoted but misquoted by morons, and they made it into an executive order now. So in this show, we'll get into all of that. But the point is, to wrap up, that we are both being tortured. We are at the end of our tether as a result, I would say. You're being tortured 24/7 pretty much. I'm being tortured at lower level, but in addition, I'm being gunned by so-called directed energy weapons. We can't get through to the Trump administration because we're being stonewalled. And meanwhile, we have the goods, and none of them who are actually inside know what the hell they're doing. Is that a fair summary of episode 1?
Well, if they have an idea what to do, they're certainly not doing it.
They're not doing it, and they're hiding very well that they have an idea what they're doing. So this is it. We're going to talk about deep capture, and the goal is that by the end of this series, after a couple of episodes, all of you understand what deep capture is. You understand what the protocol is to follow to cycle the system out of deep capture. You will know what directed energy weapons are. You will know exactly what body chips are and how to scan for them, how to find out if your family members have them, because they very well might by now. And all of these good things. And by the end of it, you will also understand what Bill's program used to do and how you can run.
Hopefully I can explain it.
We will make sure.
Yeah.
And you understand that
So
what
that you can understand.
Yeah, that what NSA is doing right now is completely illegal, unconstitutional, and actually criminal. It's a blackmail factory. It was never designed to work the way it does. And when it's actually operated the way it's meant to operate, you can uncover all pedophiles in the United States within a week, all child trafficking, all of the drug trade, all of terrorist activity, because there's a certain pattern to that behavior that once you found it, you found the individuals. That's it. Your job is done. There are only so many billion people on the planet, and it takes years to groom, to train, to deploy people, even if they're spies or terrorists or drug traffickers or whatever. Once you found them on Monday, you're done. So there's absolutely no reason why the world has to be so terrorist and crime infested as it is now. But what is actually happening is that there's this thick layer of intelligence agency plants in the Trump administration and around all of his nominees that are bullshitting them Monday to Sunday, 24/7, and are keeping the people who actually know what's going on far away from everything. Is that a fair analysis?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah,
so-
the gatekeepers are bamboozling people
Yeah.
so that you basically the leadership in Washington really isn't told something that they helps them understand how to approach the problem and what to do about it. So, and if they keep depending on these people, they're going to string them out because most of them are interlocking with the commercial industry, so that whenever there are contracts involved, they like to milk them. They say milk them for decades, and that's what's going on. That's why they object to just finding any kind of waste, because they've been living off that waste and abuse for decades.
To give people an idea about how cheap it actually is to find all this criminal activity, Bill Binney's thin thread program, it was the thin thread, because with a thin thread you could uncover the whole network. Is that right? So your thin thread program costs $3 million to develop, implement, and deploy. $3 million.
3 sites, yeah.
Yeah. $3 million to actually have this technology to be able to unmask everything, any type of crime, right? In contrast, the advert, the Super Bowl advert that the Secret Service paid for was $2 million, and that was just a recruitment ad. So if you add in, an advert and a half, $3 million, right? You would have thin thread that could actually get you all the criminal activity that you're looking for.
And the program they went and after they canceled the thin thread program was Trailblazer, and that cost almost $4 billion was the original budget for that for 5 years. But my understanding is that more than doubled from Tom Drake after that. It's thousands of times more expensive, and it failed.
Yeah. So 1,000 times more expensive. So for $4 billion, that was the original budget. You can have 1,000 times $3 million worth of thin thread.
Yeah.
So you can build 1,000 thin threads for that Trailblazer bullshit program that failed.
We were asked by the transition office at NSA, how could we upgrade the worldwide NSA network with the kind of technology we had? And we said, well, they said, what could you do with $1.2 billion? So we looked at that, and our estimate was we could upgrade every site in the world, including all the facilities back at headquarters and everywhere in the United States. But we could only spend something of the order of 300 million to do it. But that was everything. That's I don't know how many hundreds of sites we were looking at the time. But that was 80 major sites, I think. But The point was that we knew exactly what we needed to do, and we knew how to do it, and we simply did it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not we didn't have to discover anything, or it wasn't, there weren't any questions in our minds as to how to make it work.
But I guess the difference is that you are the genius who can see the path. And another thing I want to explain to people is that when you have an IQ 200, an IQ 200 guy, you can't replace it with two IQ 100 guys, because two IQ 100 guys will never in their entire lifetime come up with the stuff and the elegant and simple and quick and efficient methods that the IQ 200 guy will. Right? So that's where the ginormous saving in money is coming from. But if you think about the actual technology to uncover any and all terrorist activity anywhere in the US and the world cost $3 million, and the Secret Service ad cost $2 million, you just realize what a ginormous scam the entire intelligence industry actually is. I'm not talking about the Secret Service, because they have a protective mission, and we'll get into why the Secret Service right now is actually much more healthy, much more viable, and in much better shape than the FBI will ever be. So I'm entirely with the Secret Service, and I am nowhere near the FBI. But still, when you look at these budgets to tidy up the whole country and any and all terrorist activity, it doesn't cost billions. It costs millions. So, and that's just talking about the financial volume. Anybody could afford it. The Secret Service could afford doing this in their own budget, let alone the FBI and NSA and CIA together. So there's this huge amount of fraud that Doge didn't even remotely touch on that we want to discuss. But the point is that President Trump needs to understand that all his problems, including the network in the intelligence community that tried to kill him and has just announced that they will try again, you can find them, Mr. President, for $3 million. In fact, you don't even have to spend that much, because it's all developed. You just have to recobble it back together again.
Well, we don't have any, the code has been transformed by NSA into it was documented in the Snowden material. So
they butchered it. They bastardized it.
We'd have to do several months worth of work, I think, to be able to reconstruct some of the code.
But still, once the technology has been built once, rebuilding it a second time.
You know how to do it. So
yeah. So we're talking a couple of months to get the cannibalized capabilities back into shape, and it would be privacy protecting. It would not be mass surveillance. It would restore everybody's integrity. And using it, nobody could have spied on President Trump or his campaign or his private messages ever. Right? So that is the huge contrast between the lies that are being fed to Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and President Trump and Sean Curran in the Secret Service, and the reality of what is possible. And you know it's possible because SynThread was already deployed in the past.
And functioning, yeah.
And functioning. It's not a pie in the sky that has to be developed from scratch. No, this is something that was so amazingly effective that the deep state shut it down because its own operations, its own illegal money streams like drug trafficking and child trafficking for control file generation, think Jeffrey Epstein, would have been unmasked along with it.
In fact, all that data is still there to do that.
Yeah, and the data is still there to do it. But President Trump needs to get control of NSA. All right, I think we've said enough for today. Today was the angry, rambling opening introduction and the complete overt display of our contrasting personalities here. And yes, we are married, by the way. So I am Bill's wife, and we are very much like this in private as well. He's the very polite, nice guy, and I'm the very angry Eastern European who swears a lot. So yeah, it works. It kind of works.
Yep.
So here we are. Welcome to Deep Capture Wars. We are determined to win this war. And I think overall the show, we will do it at least weekly, but my goal is to do it twice weekly so that we get some progress and we go through. Now, the next episode, I don't know what it will be, but I would like to talk about the assassination attempt. I would like to talk about, well, the Comey's announcement of the next one. I already talked about the past ones. And we want to do more shows about what to do concretely as quickly as possible. And also, we'll be talking publicly about our next attempt to get through to Sean Curran at the Secret Service and to President Trump. after what I've seen from Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, and the fact that Kash Patel literally refused to acknowledge an email we wrote to him directly that we know he got, I'm kind of done with him for some time. I want to let him flap around in the wind until he realizes that he doesn't know what he's doing. But meanwhile, Director Sean Curran needs to protect President Trump of the upcoming assassination attempt that U.S. intelligence has just announced through James Comey. And I think this time they will not do the same mistakes they did in Butler, which was, hire Gen Z, and they were, predictably, thankfully, utterly hopeless. But I am terrified, and I am working flat out to do my utmost to protect President Trump. And I'm very, very supportive of the Secret Service. I have not seen them fuck up as cataclysmically as I've seen the FBI consistently be a criminal organization. So that's where we're heading. We would like to get through to President Trump and Sean Curran ASAP. I will make another trip up to DC, and this time I'm taking Bill with me.
Yep.
And we will try to have a meeting with Director Curran if he can meet us and is willing to meet us for an hour. But I think for that, we need to put out publicly what we're capable of. And that's what this show will be about. So you'll be following us live, and please support us. And also, I want to have prominent victims like Dr. Millicent Black back on. She continues to be tortured. I want to have other whistleblowers on this show who are also fighting deep capture. So you will also see other important people you should follow and hear about their important work. So do you have anything to add, final message to our viewers?
No, except the only thing is all of this is solvable. It's a doable and a resolvable problem that can be fixed and fixed properly, so that and give everybody privacy and protection at the same time, giving up neither.
Privacy protecting, fixed permanently, right?
Right.
Cheaply, effectively, and quickly as well. So what is there possibly to object?
Including finding every illegal thing or kind of corrupt thing going on inside government.
And I think
inside the government.
That's what they don't want.
Yeah.
It would be Doge on steroids, because Doge was only the financial side. It was not looking into the criminal conspiratorial side. It did not touch on criminal conspiracies in government and with private corporations. And that is the realm of the intelligence agencies.
And they don't really, most of them don't really understand they already have all the data necessary to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
They just don't.
The other thing is it's quite urgent, because people who know how to do stuff are basically being taken out. They're being killed by the intelligence agencies. There are assassination attempts. There's the murder of Victoria Giuffre, who was the victim and witness in the Epstein case against Prince Andrew. And these people are being murdered. It's sometimes called a suicide, sometimes a car accident, you name it. But they are being taken out by the intelligence agencies. So behind the scenes, the intelligence, like the FBI, it's not a law enforcement organization. It never has been in its entire history. They never investigated the JFK assassination, 9/11, COVID, anything. They didn't investigate the Trump assassination attempts either. They are not a law enforcement agency. They are a transnational criminal organization. For that, there's ample proof, and we will present some of the proof going forward. But it's basically covert murder industries that need to be shut down as part of the deep capture wars. But anyway, if you lasted this long through our rambling episode of just saying hi to you guys, we hope to see you twice weekly on our show, and we hope to educate you, and we're looking forward to your comments. And please support us if you're on social media. Spread the word, please, because we desperately need the help of patriots to get through. So I think that's it. Have a good night, everybody, and hope to see